memo to the file of Kevin Harris. It is October 4th by Kevin Harbison. Received a phone call this morning from President of the Union, David Harper. I want to discuss the Calvin Harris issue about us bringing him back to work and the suspension. Told him that I was in the middle of payroll and he had to call me back later. He then called me back this afternoon, somewhere between 3:30 4 o'clock range. He stated that he wanted to discuss this issue with me. Was I open for discussion? I said yes, I would discuss it with him. He then stated that all this was based around the fact that Calvin had a good reason for not working the mandatory overtime last night, and that his reason was that his kids were in private school and they were required to attend parent-teacher conferences. And he said, I know that is true because he said, my kids go to the same school, and I know that they had conferences. And he said, in fact, I was in conferences last night and saw his van parked in the parking lot. So he said, I know he was there somewhere. He also stated that earlier in the week on Tuesday, because the incident we're talking about happened on Thursday, he said, and earlier in the week on Tuesday, I know his wife had been sick too. So then he went on to say that, these meetings could not be rescheduled, that the school does not reschedule these meetings, and that, he knows for a fact that, just like him, that Calvin is very involved in his children's school life, and they moved to this, just put him in this new school this year, and that, he was very concerned and wanted to be a part of these meetings, in which I told him was fine, but I said, when work conditions permit, things have to be rearranged. And then again, he said that they couldn't rearrange the meetings. And he said, so you're telling me that you're not being flexible, that you're not going to look at the reason why he couldn't change his schedule? And I said that what I was basing my decisions on is the contract and the contract language. And he said that, so you're telling me that, if he had a good reason that, say for example his wife had died, that, you would still fire him even though his wife had died because he wasn't going to work the overtime? And my response to that was, so you're telling me that if his wife did die, that the school would not reschedule this, quote, unreschedulable meeting? And he did not have a response to that. And he said, well, these people have good reasons why they can't work. They shouldn't be made to have to work that mandatory overtime. He said, you're going to be firing all kinds of people. And I said, I'm just following the contract. I said, the part about the contract which says that if they have good reason, they don't have to work the overtime, is if they've got 10, say we have, for example, 10 employees, we only need 5 of them to work. Those 5 then, for whatever, the people that we chose, if they had for good reason, they could not work, then that would be pushed down, and then the least senior employees would be then required to work. I said, that's not the case here. The case here is we needed 3 employees to work. We only had 3 employees available. Therefore, they were the 3 least senior employees in the plant, and they were required to work under their contract. He said that, it should be, the company should just use good judgment as far as what are good reasons for employees not to be working this mandatory overtime. So then I told him, what is a good reason? Is a good reason that, my mother's sick and I want to take her to the doctor? Is it a good reason that my dog has died and I want to, go bury it, or it's severely sick and I want to take it to the vet? How can you make a determination of what is important to one person over the other person? I said, that is why we have a contract. And the contract clears this up so that there is no ambiguity, because it states that there is mandatory overtime and the least senior qualified people that are required to work have to work. And in this instance, we needed 3 people. 3 people had to work, and there was only 3 people there. he then said, well, you're going to have all kinds of people that aren't going to work. He said, you've got mandatory overtime for Friday night and on Saturday. He said, what are you going to do if these people don't show up? And I said, well, I'm going to have to suspend them all pending termination. And he said, well, that's going to bring the company down. He said, you're just going to destroy the branch and make it close. And I said, no, I'm not. The employees are the ones doing it because they don't want to work. I said, we have customers out there. We have orders we have to fill. I said, this has been a really bad year. That branch has been losing money for over a year. I said, they finally got some orders coming in, and now employees don't want to work. I said, we've got 6 employees, cannot justify hiring any more because there's not funds there to support it. But if all 6 would work, we wouldn't have a problem. But the problem is we only have 3 people working. I then asked Harper, I said, are you threatening me? And he said, no. I said, are you threatening me that you're going to tell these employees not to report to work? And he said, no. And I just want to make a note in here that if he does that, we need to file, and if these employees don't show up, I've told Kara that to call me and let me know, because I'm going to file an unfair labor practices claim against him. Oh, backing up a little bit, where Harper was saying, when we had that discussion about, he was trying to say that we were closing the place and putting the company, out of business over there. He said, what are you going to do if everybody walks out? And I said I was going to put an ad in the paper. And he said, he said, I don't think you can find burners like that. And I said, well, we'll just take our chances and see what happens. And he said, well, it's not like the truck driving you're doing over here and just calling Ryder and having them bring in replacement drivers. I also told Harper that, that this is business. We're trying to meet the demands of the customers, and that we just can't work around everybody's schedule sometimes, especially when we have such shorthanded and such few people, and that if we do that, we lose control of the whole company. We might as well just go ahead and shut the doors. If we let them choose when they're going to work and what times they're going to work, it just can't happen that way. Then Harper wanted to know that if I was going to talk to Calvin, and I said yes. I told him that I was sending out a letter today, that I was going to send certified over to Calvin, and that I was going to explain to him again what I told him on the phone yesterday, and that I was going to be calling him to set up a meeting to take his statement, that I would have him come in and take a statement from him also. And I told him that we would look at all the facts in the situation, we would review it, compile all of our information. We would then take it to our attorney, and I said, well, then we would be making a decision. We would let them know what that decision would be in a few days. And he said, okay.